There are literally thousands of board games that exist in the world, and new ones are coming out every year. My personal favorite this year, Exploding Kittens! No kittens were harmed in the making of this game. What's your favorite board game?
So my favourite board game is Codenames, and I like it because it's very strategic and it requires you to have a good connection with your teammates in order to win.
So my favourite board game is Scotland Yard. You have to catch Mr. X, but I like being Mr. X more.
My favourite board game is called Wise and Otherwise. It's all these wise sayings and proverbs from around the world. Players have to make up the second part of a wise saying, and the other players have to guess which one is the right one. So it's really funny.
My favourite board game is called Articulate. I like it because it's the only game which I'm good at.
Hi kids.
Hey kids, hope you guys are doing well. My favorite board game is Codenames because it is fun, it is exciting, you get to play with lots of people, you can be really creative in how you describe the words, it can be really funny to put off the other team or to see how your friends think you're thinking.
My favourite board game would probably be Articulate. It's a really fun interactive game where you try and guess what each other on your team, people on your team are trying to act out, and you guys should definitely play it.
Yeah, have a good study guys, and we will play this board game soon hopefully.
Sometimes people play board games to learn battle strategies or to study chance and probability, but the primary reason that people play board games, the answer is pretty simple, because they're fun. Last session, we talked about this amazing hope that even though work feels hard and pointless now, work in heaven will be enjoyable and completely satisfying. This session, we'll be thinking about the opposite of work. Play! You're probably thinking, oh yeah, I can totally get behind this. All right then, how would you respond to Skeptical Sam?
Playing is fine as long as it's productive, like exercising or practicing an instrument. I don't see the point of sitting around and playing video games. Hobbies are so expensive. Why spend money on hobbies when you could give that money to the poor? When you get to heaven, you'll have an eternity to rest. Earth is for working. There are so many people who don't know Jesus yet. We should use all of our extra time to share Jesus with them.
Maybe this is more complicated than we thought. Let's dig deep into what God thinks about rest and play. For some of us, God kind of sounds like a skeptical Sam. He's always telling us to work, work, work. Of course, God does think work is important. He worked and he calls us to work. But God also rested. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Wait a second. Did God rest because he was too tired? That doesn't sound like an all-powerful God. There's a better reason why rest is so important to God, so much so that rest shows up in the Ten Commandments. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. The Ten Commandments comes at the end of a long history, like 400 years long, of God's people being slaves in Egypt. Yikes! One of them, Moses, miraculously survives and is sent back by God to rescue the Israelites out of Egypt and out of slavery. Water into blood, frog and locusts, angel of death, parting of the Red Sea, all that good stuff. After this stunning rescue, God gives this commandment about a day of rest called the Sabbath. Why? The Sabbath was a weekly reminder to the Israelites that they were no longer slaves. As a slave, you worked 365 days a year. Now they're rescued. They're finally free to not work. But Jesus takes this further. Jesus says in John 8, "Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the son sets you free, you will be free indeed." Jesus knows that it's not just the outside things that enslave us, but also things on the inside. Our fear of failure, our desire for attention, our selfishness, all of these things control us. But Jesus finished the most important work for us. Jesus said, "It is finished." With that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. When Jesus died on the cross, he finished the work of setting us free. His resurrection from the dead is proof that we can join him in living this new life of freedom. So use your freedom to rest and to play. Jesus makes us free so we can enjoy life the way that it was meant to be. Let's pause for a moment. How would you describe God's character? What are the first words that pop into your mind? You might have said things like perfect, loving, powerful, or maybe even invisible. But did anyone say playful? It's kind of strange to think about, isn't it? That God is playful. But there are some pretty wacky stories that we find in the Bible. Shrek was not the first talking donkey. Nuh-uh. God made a donkey talk back to its master. Jesus pulled money from the mouth of a fish, and Jesus talked to a tree. It seems like God has a pretty good sense of humor. So, God rested, and God is playful. What does that mean for us? God rested, so we rest. We need rhythms of work and rest so we don't burn out. Taking time off from work allows our bodies and minds and souls to recover. You can learn more about this from our session on sleep. God plays, so we can play. Playing reminds us that we're made in God's image. We are who we are because He is who He is. Playing energizes us and helps us get ready to work again, but that's not the main point. We don't rest and play just so that we can work more. Actually, the purpose of play is to reflect God's playfulness. So when we have time off, we can use it to pursue the things we enjoy, the hobbies we find fun, the activities that really capture our imagination. You know how families kind of look like each other? Enjoying time off actually helps us to look more like God, and it's our way of showing our family resemblance to Him. We rest and play because Jesus has set us free. We no longer live under the influence of our anger and hurts. We're no longer bored with life. We no longer have to work and work and work to win the approval of others or to be better than somebody else. We are free! We are free! Sometimes we hold back from having fun or being goofy because we're afraid of what people might think. We're afraid of sticking out from the crowd or looking stupid. Actually, in those moments, we're slaves to our pride and our fears. But when we're free in Jesus, we can enjoy things without holding back. Sometimes we think of Christians as being uptight and stuffy. Actually, disciples of Jesus should be the most fun people you know. Greatest commandment number 1. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Like everything else we've talked about so far, sleeping, eating, exercising, working, and playing are all ways to honor God. We can celebrate God's beauty by enjoying His creation through things like a hike or photography or gardening. We can celebrate God's creativity by doing creative things ourselves, like making music or painting or baking. How does your play celebrate God? Greatest commandment number 2, love your neighbor as yourself. Play is actually a wonderful way to serve others. Ask yourself, is my play purely selfish? Or is there a way I can play to include others and to show God's hospitality towards them? For instance, we can binge watch on YouTube, which causes us to skip dinner with the family, or we can invite others to watch a film with us. Does our play harm other people or cause more work for them? For example, you enjoy your football match, but then it's someone else who has to muck up your muddy shoes. Therefore, in total, we've discussed 5 different principles. P, pause. Rest and play helps us to recover from our work. I, image bearing. Play helps us grow in how much we look like God. And no longer slaves. Jesus has set us free, so play without guilt. G, God first. Play is a way to glorify God. S, serve others. Play is also a way to serve people around you. That spells pings. Let's take video gaming as a case study and see how these principles apply. I'm not going to make a blacklist of games you can play and games you can't play. I'm also not going to say you can only game for 30 minutes a day. Because really, it's a decision between you and God, and it'll be different for every person. But let's see how pings can give us wisdom in this. P, pause. When do you game? Is gaming taking away from your rest? If you're gaming late into the night, straining your eyes when your brain is telling you to go to sleep, maybe that's not giving your body the time it needs to properly recover. I, image bearing. Some games help us grow in our image of God. These games value teamwork, fair play, patience, and truthfulness. But watch out if the game makes you look less and less like God. Perhaps it's super violent, perhaps it uses sex as a selling point, or it makes you more angry and less likely to love others. And no longer slaves. Are you playing this game in freedom, or are you a slave to it? Let's not be naive. Addiction is a real problem that people struggle with. So let's continuously test our motivations. Game in a way that celebrates the freedom Jesus has given to you. G, God first. Ask yourself, is this game or the way I game helping me love God more? As I game, am I grateful for the gift of technology? Or do you moan and whine whenever someone tells you to get off? S, serve others. Is there a way this game can help you show hospitality to others? Maybe it means going over to that quiet, lonely kid at school and inviting them to join in. Maybe it's a way to keep in touch with friends, showing them how your gaming habits are different because you love Jesus. Maybe it means using words online that build others up instead of tearing them down. No matter what your hobby is, no matter what you do in your free time, be a follower of Jesus who pings when they rest and play. See you next time. GG.